entry rights. Otherwise, you can just follow along when we go through the answers. Then we'll review with some frequently asked questions, and then we'll wrap up. This subject matter is a little bit more complicated than a lot of the subjects that we cover in these webinars. So it is targeted to seasoned data entry staff. Again, it's more complicated data entry and more complicated subject about the different paths an ACL or an EPL can take. So I'm going to start out with some background about the ACL billing project, or sometimes we call it ACL FMS. The Water Board implemented this project so that we could track what is owed to us, both contingent receivables that come from unsettled actions or projects, for example, and account receivables, and those are what's recorded in orders and settled actions and past due projects. The State Board will send out invoices for account receivables, and SWRCB now provides information to our financial management systems, and those systems then provide information back to SWRCB. We are now in the, we've implemented this project for SWRCB, so it's ongoing now, but we have not yet done so for SMARTS and ERINs, and those have not been scheduled for implementation yet. So again, about what this means, here's a diagram that illustrates the idea of the data transfers between systems. So data about what is being assessed goes into SWRCB, our database there. So that's complaints and orders and the monetary enforcement actions that we're talking about. That information is then transferred to our financial management system, starting out with AFBS, and then that information is then transferred to FMS, our financial management system. And then at that point, from FMS, that's what generates the invoices, and information also goes to CalSTARS, which is the state's accounting reporting system. And then from FMS, also DAS staff enter in the paid amounts into FMS, and that's what gets transferred back to AFBS, and then finally into SWRCB. Then you have that little offshoot from SWRCB to our report server, and that information then can then be available in our ACL report and other reports that we make available. And I do want to note that when a payment is recorded in SWRCB, so really it's recorded in FMS, that information gets transferred to AFBS and then finally to SWRCB. Staff, person that's related as staff to the enforcement action as well as the SWRCB coordinator receives an email saying that a payment has been posted, and so if there are no additional outstanding milestones, staff must make that regulatory measure historical. So that was all about the overall project. Now I'm going to move on and talk about the data entry into SWRCB. But we do want to make sure we're all in the same starting place about what we're talking about here. So we're going to have a polling question about what types of actions are considered monetary. And this is a select all that apply polling question. So I'm going to open up our question, and we have ACL, court orders, 13380, 13308, time schedule orders, EPLs, NOVs, and stipulated orders. So go ahead and select all of those enforcement action types that you think qualify as relating to monetary assessment. No, because you don't have a computer, so we don't.
Oh yeah, I know I registered for it.
Oh, yeah, no, you have to be actually. give you more seconds for those that are in progress to finish up. Go ahead and close the poll now, because most of those that are participating are done. Nope. So now we're going to go ahead and go through that. To close your polling window, you can just click the X in the right-hand corner of that, but I have the answers up here. Okay, so things that are considered monetary actions are here highlighted in purple, and ACLs, so that's pretty straightforward. Regulatory measure type is ACL, or administrative civil liability. Court orders are also considered related to monetary actions, and they have the regulatory measure type of court order. And 13308 time scheduled orders, however, while that's a separate action. If it's violated, then a separate ACL is issued. So then the new record is an ACL, which is then considered a monetary action. We also have stipulated order. Here you use the type of regulatory measure of ACL, or administrative civil liability. And the other one that is considered a monetary assessment is EPLs. And this also includes pre-complaint letters, and other things that are informal actions of an offering to settle your outstanding violations. And an OV is not considered a monetary enforcement. Okay, any questions on that? Go ahead. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to the enforcement action wizard. And the key features of the wizard: it starts from a violation record, and the violation record must have a responsible party, a related water board, and a related originating place, and it must have the status of violation.
Jerome, I had a question that's pertinent to the previous slide. EPL is short for expedited payment letter. Some of your enforcement attorneys may call these settlement letters or pre-complaint letters. But basically, it's just a monetary letter that goes out to a discharger asking them to settle the amount that's stated in the letter. It's not as formal as a complaint, and therefore a comment period occurs after the matter has been settled as opposed to while the complaint is in progress.
Thank you. I should not have used the acronym.
So, Jalma, this is Javelle. So to record a pre-complaint letter, we would use the EPL?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, just to restate what Javelle is asking, if you're recording a pre-complaint letter, use the regulatory measure type of EPL. So when you're going through the wizard, as we'll see, it includes some other language that hopefully is clear. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So some other key features about the wizard is that once a receivable has been transferred to our financial management system, if you remember back to the diagram we showed a couple slides ago, they must be accounted for. So that means we can't delete records, we can't change milestones without reversing the original receivable. So that means that it seems like the record is locked down a lot more than other record types. And that's true, it is, and hopefully we do that with a conscious decision to do that because of this. because this information has already gone to another system that then needs to be accounted for. You do still have some flexibility, though, by using a status called modify, and I have an example later on. But basically, if you make a mistake in one of your milestones that you say the due date is the wrong due date, you can put modify as the status of the milestone and recreate it, and that will reverse out the original receivable and create a new one. And again, I'll be going through that in more detail. Another feature is that the billing address is derived from the WDID, and the WDID is what is used in the annual fee billing, so our accounting system already has a customer record for it. So you have the first choice is to use the WDID, and the system will automatically pick up the billing address associated to that WDID. If you have a site that isn't under requirement, so it doesn't get an annual fee, then you have the option of entering a billing address directly into the ACL record or the monetary assessment record. So we have some additional features. We do have this payment plan feature. And when you're creating a liability, if what has been agreed upon is a payment plan, you mark the radio button for payment plan and then set up for milestones that are due within 30 days. This status should be not completed. For anything that has a due date greater than 30 days, the status will be payment plan. Then we have an overnight process, so SWRCB will check all the milestones that have the status of payment plan, see if they are still more than 30 days out. When they are less than 30 days out, it'll automatically change the status to not complete, and this will then get transferred over to FMS, and an invoice will be generated. And another feature is our late project milestone conversion. And currently, the system will send an email to the staff person, the person related to staff, to the enforcement action 2 weeks prior to the due date of the project milestone related to a monetary enforcement action, saying, hey, you have a project milestone due in 2 weeks. Just make sure that you're on top of that. Then 1 week after the due date, any outstanding project milestones will be superseded and the liability will be created for the suspended liability amount. And then again, an email is sent to staff saying this has been done. And so even if your first milestone is the one that's late, all the remaining milestones will be superseded and a liability milestone will be created, again, for the amount that the project is worth. We have a couple of upcoming enhancements that were requested to make sure that staff is aware that this is happening, even if the primary staff person is out of the office or something. So our enhancements are that on the actual due date, another email is sent to staff saying it's due today, and that gives you a week to then, make sure that if the discharger did send something in, that's gotten recorded in SWRCB. The other part of the enhancements are that additional people will be CC'd on that email, the enforcement coordinators, the SWRCB coordinators, and the supervisor of the staff person. And that's only on the second and third email, so that's the one that's on the that will be sent on the due date of the project milestone, and the one that's sent 1 week after when the conversion to a liability actually happens. So now we're going to move on to our first demonstration, and that's creating a new record. And this is for EPLs, or expedited payment letters, and that, as Aaron discussed, that encompasses all informal money letters, pre-complaint, pre-filing, pre-settlement, and we have a violation that we're going to start with. We know that it hasn't been settled, it's active, and was issued earlier this month, and we have an order number. So I'm going to move over to UX and log in. And this is our test database, of course, because it's not real data. I'm going to go to Create, Maintain Violations. I'm going to search for my violation ID, and that's 947817. And so here's my violation record. I'm going to go right over to the linked enforcement action and hit the Launch Enforcement Action Wizard. Here you see all the other enforcement actions that are related to this facility or directly linked to this violation, and this column here indicates whether they're actually linked to the violation. And while this facility has a number of enforcement actions, we're not seeing any that are linked already to this violation. That's just an explanation of this screen, but we'll go ahead and launch enforcement actions wizard. And then we'll get to our first question, which is money involved with this action? Hopefully being very straightforward about what we're trying to ask, but it does have some language about what this applies to, kind of going back to our first polling question about what we're talking about here. ACL complaints, orders, expedited payment letters, etc. So we're going to say yes. It displays the WDID. Again, this is required because this is hooked up to the customer record in our financial management system. And so you have the opportunity, if for some reason this isn't the right WDID, you have an opportunity to update it, but we're going to go ahead and leave that as is and click the type of action. And for our scenario, we're entering an EPL. We have to put in a description. It'll be a little more descriptive than that, but for our demonstration, we're just going to keep it simple. Then you have a chance to verify the staff, and this already, again, pre-populates this staff person for you, because it comes from the assigned staff to the violation, but if it happens to be somebody else, maybe a staff person moved on, you have the opportunity to change it by selecting the Search Staff button and coming up with the party search screen. Has the monetary assessment letter, etc., been settled? And from our exercise setup, we know that it hasn't, so we're going to say no. Then it asks us, is the regulatory measure status active or draft? We know that it was issued earlier this month, so it is active. Then we get an opportunity to enter the date that it was issued, and it was issued on June 4th. We have an order number. And then here we see the billing address information. And as it says, it's based on the enforcement actions WDID, which I've talked about, because it's linked to the customer record, which is all based on WDID. And so this one does pick up, because it is a billable, the site has a billable FPS permit, it has taken that information and populated it for you to review here. Then that enforcement action wizard asks, do you want to add additional violations for the new enforcement action? Because we just started with one violation, at this point, only one violation would be linked to the enforcement action. If you say yes here, you'll get an opportunity to add additional violations. I'm going to go ahead and say no, just for quickness of data entry, and then create enforcement action. And I get a box that pops up that says my enforcement action has been successfully created, gives me the regulatory measure ID of that action, and then it goes on to remind me to upload my enforcement action. It's a formal enforcement action, and also tells me that the enforcement action, the new record will pop up in a new window so I can review it, and here it is. And it's all created for us and linked to the WBID, has our EPL issuance date, and is linked to the base NPDES permit that the violation violated, the violation that we started out with violated. So are there any questions on that so far?
Found.
No? Okay. We have another magnet for you to
Jarma?
Yes.
There, it says on the top there are 2 errors found.
Oh, well, good eye. You get a bonus for finding a new functionality. We are in test, and we'll be having a CWIX release in a week and a half or so, and this is a new feature that we have to help us have find when we have data entry errors. We can go ahead and view it. It'll look a little bit different once we go into production. I will go over the errors because it does have to do with our this data entry. And the errors found are that we didn't enter staff costs and we didn't enter economic benefit. And those, as you can see, the system didn't require it at this time, but we do need to be reporting this information so it does show up as failing the QA check because we didn't enter those that information. And so that's what that's all about. You'll be seeing more of this in after our release on July 8th. And just since it was pointed out, I should go over that on the enforcement tab, we do have these penalty attributes for you to record staff costs, economic benefits, and maximum potential liability. And you can enter those by launching the update wizard and modifying the record, or when we do our next update, we also have the opportunity to add in those costs or fields.
Question? So when there's an error, when you do have the error messages shown, they don't prevent you from going forward?
No.
Good. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on now to the second part of the demonstration, which is to update the record that we just created. And for this demonstration, we're going to say that the EPL is settled without a hearing. That's the settled without hearing date is the date that we received the fine form from the discharger saying that they have waived their right to a hearing and would like to settle the case. And we have the countersign date. That's the date that's been signed by the executive director or the executive officer. And then here's our settlement agreement that it's for $10,000 due on July 24th, and we have our water code there. So we're going to go back into CWIX. And we'll launch our update wizard. And we get a menu of things that we can do. This menu changes depending on the state of your enforcement action. So if we had instead of an EPL, we have, a complaint, we get different options. So again, it's dynamic depending on where the state of your enforcement action that you're working on is. And here we want to settle, and we have the opportunity to change staff if they happen to change during our entry time. We have enter the ACL settled without hearing date, and we were given that yesterday. Has the monetary assessment letter been countersigned by the CEO? Yes. And we get an opportunity to enter that date. In fact, it's required, as noted by that red asterisk. We have the chance to update our description and now add a liability. If you just have one, you can name it either both a project or a liability, something generic like project or liability. Especially with projects, if you have more than one project, you really do want to give it a unique name to help identify it for further data entry. You can mark whether it's applicable to a MP or not, give it a liability description. Again, if there were multiple and you were trying to distinguish between different liabilities or different projects, you could give it some description. Here's the important question about payment plans. Again, it's very important that if there is a payment plan, you mark yes, so that invoices aren't set out for 3 years of payments when we're only expecting one payment a month, for example. And doing your data entry correctly, then the invoices will be sent out according to the payment plan instead of all at once. So then we select our water code, and we have our due date of next month. Our amount is $10,000. And we notice we have these relatively new fields. They've been in for a while, but just a few weeks ago they started getting populated, and that comes from our financial management system. As I demonstrated, or as we showed with that diagram in the beginning, information is coming from another system to populate CWICs, and this is where that happens: the invoice number, the invoice date, invoice due date, and status, and the paid amount. But right now, since it hasn't made its way over to their system and hasn't come back, those are blank. And then we can go ahead and update our enforcement action. So when we go in to the enforcement tab, go into the liability, you see now that it selected the initial ACL liability milestone type for us, and it created our $10,000 milestone. So any questions on that?
John, if there's a payment plan, is the status automatically changed to payment plan instead of not completed?
Yes. It changes from payment plan within 30 days of it being due. It changes from payment plan to not completed. So.
Okay.
John, this is Russ.
Yes.
A couple questions. Could you scroll up a little bit? Oh, it was on the other screen. If the discharger pays before the order is, before it is countersigned, can we go back and change that? Sometimes they'll get the EPL and they'll go ahead and send a check without, at the same time they issue the waiver without us countersigning the order.
Can I answer that instead? Okay. So we obviously strongly discourage that because the comment period the period for public comment for an EPL occurs after the hearing is waived, and so that causes one problem because he can't countersign it, and the full ACL can't be completed until the comment period is ended, and so then you're basically have to wait until, so you have to cash the check right away, and then you have to make sure that your termination date takes into account that public comment period because you have to make sure it ends. Does that make sense?
Right. So when the
your termination date would be after the payment was received if the public comment period has not ended.
Right. So when State Board receives the check early,
yes,
what is the process?
They will cash it just like you guys would.
Okay.
We do not hang on to checks. We do not issue refunds.
Right. So then I will have the ability to go back in after they post the payment to close this out.
Yes, and again, you want to make sure that your termination date includes the end of the comment period.
Right. Yeah, the signature of the...
Yeah, and your date of adoption will be the date it's countersigned, but the termination date would include all of the process that we have to go through.
Okay. And the second question regarding a payment plan, at the point in the presentation where it's just changing to an ACLC, we would not know at that time that a payment plan was approved. It would have to be in order first.
Correct.
We can change that later as well.
Yes, whenever you issue a complaint, you have an initial liability. During the process of a complaint and when it potentially goes to order or during settlement negotiations, the complaint can change. We can have it amended, or we may have to dismiss violations that were erroneous. And so therefore we supersede our initial liability and we can create new liabilities. And that could be in the form of a payment plan or just a different amount for a new liability.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to move on for some fun for you guys. So this is for you to create a new record, and you start with your violation. So in test, so you're going to log into test. That's the key feature here, and you can search by an identifier at the bottom of the search screen, and I've set up orders for each of the regions. And so here I have RX means your region, so R4, R2. For the regions that have sub-offices, I included the sub-office indicator just for ease of this exercise. So search on by your for the identifier, and you'll come up with a violation. And then the real part is to create your active ACL complaint. You have an issue date, a complaint number. Again, the X represents your region. It's for $10,000. It's due on the 3rd. And then I'm gonna open up a polling question, and you can record your regulatory measure ID that results from this your exercise. Once you're finished creating it, enter your reg measure ID into the polling question. Anybody have any questions before we go ahead and get started? Again, log into test. If you're unsure how to navigate to test, we can go through that too. From our Safe Board WaterNet page, you can go to SWRCB.
Jerma, on the last one, you had the order number being 2011 and then 2014. It is 2011, correct? That's the base order.
When in the example, it's the base order is in 2011. Yeah, that I put one crazy with the force. And I'll put that information back up. I just wanted to show you how to get from the SWRCB intranet site. You all know how to get there, but I did just walk through that. Go to test. Since I'm already logged in, it won't take me right here, but you'll get the login screen, and it'll be a little bit blue. Yeah, just
think I'm confused. Enter regulatory measure ID. Enforcement action record. I didn't. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go. Start? No. Close. Don't save. I'm not on. Okay. Jarma?
Yeah.
We were supposed to get online and do how do I get there? Create this.
Yeah, we were hoping you went to test. I did go to that. If you can go ahead and start now if you want, or you can do the, I can send out the exercise afterwards. But to get to test, SWRCB_test, you go to our SWRCB intranet site, and then go to the SWRCB site. Yeah, and then there, right at the top, it says system logins, and then there's one for production and one for test, and you hit the one for test.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I didn't. I'm not making it.
Huh?
Not making, oh, okay, just a second. Okay, so, did I not turn you off? Can you still hear me?
Yes.
I'll turn you off, sorry. Not getting it. Just not getting it. And I would if I could. I don't know how to get on. I just don't know how to get on. I don't have one. I'm getting frustrated. Don't really care about the response. I'm trying to get onto a new tab.
We did run out of time on the poll, but we are going to give another minute for you to finish up.
I can't get there. And this is driving me crazy. What the flippin'? It didn't work ever. It didn't work.
Hey, Jorma, can I use Region 1's violation? Because I don't have anything for Region 5, Sacramento.
Yeah, I think you can go ahead and try.
Okay.
Well, you can have it, because I didn't get it.
What you can do if you have finished, you can send your reg measure ID to the Aaron in the chat feature. There we go. Thank you, Anthony. All right. Well, but in interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and go through this so we can continue on. So, as I said, we start in violation, and just go down to the bottom, and you have this order number identifier of linked reg measure. Example here. Here I have my violation record that came up. Go into the violation record and go to the linked enforcement actions tab, launch the enforcement action wizard. Say yes, it is involved. Money is involved with this action. I should have warned you, there is a WDI associated to them just so that the billing address would come up, even though it's not. Well, unless you're from Region 2, it'll look like the wrong one, but I'm going to leave that. It's an ACL, and in the description, and you put a little more thought into that than I just did, but and we select complaint, that it's active. It was issued on the 3rd. We have an order number. And we're going to add a liability. Maybe today. The column's there. We'll leave it now. We can stop it. And our water code did not give you that, but hopefully you'll have an Aaron there to help you, or you can just pick one for this exercise. And it's due the 3rd for, again, $10,000. $3,000? Oh, well, I just put it in the 7th. If you don't like that amount, since it's an exercise, you're welcome to change it. And no additional violations in same place. So hopefully you were either on your way to doing those steps or had the chance to complete them. Are there any questions on that exercise?
No.
So that was really where I just went through it. And now we're going to update. We are getting a little low on time, but we'll try to finish up our exercise because I think it's important to go through. And this time I'm going to use the update wizard to turn the record that you just created into an order. And we have a new order number and the adoption date of today. And then we had some board changes that are listed there, $5,000 for the liability, and then you had a step for $2,000. And we have one progress report due, and then the final project completion at the end of the year. So go ahead and use that record that you just created to make these adjustments. I'll give you another 2 minutes to do that.
No.
I know you probably didn't get a chance to finish up all the way, but since you may not have finished your original record, I don't want to have everybody wait for that. So we're going to go ahead and go through how to do that process, and hopefully, again, you were able to do this exercise, or at least start it, but we'll go through it so you can check your users. We'll launch the update wizard. What actions you want to do? We want to make an order, and we have an adoption issuance date. Did the order number change? Yes.
Yes.
The new order number. Good. Was the amount negotiated? Yes. So here we have a new liability amount. So we want to say this original liability is superseded. We want to add more rows. So click that little hyperlink there, and then you get additional rows to fill out. So we're going to pick the same water code. We have a new due date. New amount. And so that's good for our liability, but we also have a step. So we're going to add a project. Click that Add a Project button. This new table pops up. Again, we only have one project, so we can be generic on the name. So we're going to pick the type, and what is the total amount. Looks like we need to increase the size of that box. But you type in your project amount of $2,000. And then we have two things that are due, a progress report and a final completion. So we're going to submit a status report and pick our same water codes. The due date of September 1st. One second. And then the status is not completed. Then we have our complete, it's a construction or something that's indicated here, completion of the project that's required. So in our case, what we say is they have to construct something for their step, whatever is applicable for this specific step. Then we have a due date of 12/31 of the year, and this is also not completed. And you can have the opportunity to have multiple projects, but we just have one for this. And we're going to say no, there are not additional modifications, and go ahead and update the enforcement action. And when this completes the updated record, we want to show you the enforcement tab, and the project that resulted looks a little bit different than what we filled out. And you see now that there are 3 milestones, even though we only filled out 2. This last one was automatically created to hold the suspended liability amount. And so if the discharger misses this due date, then all of these will automatically supersede, and a liability for this $2,000 will be created. Right, these are the important features about this. Are there any questions about that update step?
I just want to add to upload your attachment. Under the attachment tab, if you are an ECM, you need to upload them into SWRCB. That is a requirement, and you do not have to duplicate effort and upload them into ECM as well.
They will be made available.
Yeah, they will be made available in ECM.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on now. To our FAQs. First one is my ACL has been petitioned. What do I do? So you update your record by launching the update wizard using that button in the enforcement action. When it asks what action you want to do, select petition. Then it'll ask you for the petition date, and you enter that. And then select to update your enforcement action. This will make the action appear as a hold on the problematic report, and then DAS will put it on hold in FMS. And when it's on hold, if the invoice hasn't yet been sent, DAS will not send the invoice. If the invoice has already been sent, no further collection will be pursued until the hold is removed. The next question we get gotten up is if I accidentally entered 7/25/2023 as the due date instead of 7/25/2013, what do I do? Again, you launch the update wizard. This is where you use that status, the milestone status. First, we're going to select that we want to modify as the action that we're going to do. Then when you get into the edit screen, you go down to where you made the mistake and select modified as the status of that milestone. Then you create a new milestone row with the correct information. So likely you'll have to hit that hyperlink of add more rows, and it'll add 12 new rows, and you just use one of them to recreate your milestone with the correct date. And again, that modified status is seen as there was an error. That's when you're supposed to be using that status. If you put an error, whether it's the due date or the water code. There's something that's an error, it'll reverse that liability or receivable, whether it's a project or a liability, and then you need to create the replacement one. And here's another one. Although a project milestone was complete, it was not recorded as such in CWIX, and it was converted into a liability. What do I do? Since we had this new feature turn on of the overdue project milestones converting into liabilities, we have had some of these cases, and it is tricky to back out of. I do want to point out that not keeping up to date on the data entry is inconsistent with the data entry expectations. ACL and other monetary actions are supposed to be updated within 2 days because these types of things happen. But if it does happen, and we understand that things can happen, you only have a day or two before an invoice is sent out. So you need to contact the AES immediately to have the invoice put on hold, and then provide documentation that the milestone was actually completed. And then we can work with also updating the CWIX screen to reflect that it was actually done, and to cancel the liability as well. So as soon as you know that it has happened, just contact the AES to put that invoice on hold. But again, hopefully with all the emails that are sent relating to this conversion, then it won't happen, but that's what you do if it does happen. The next one is an ACL is issued to the old owner of the site, but the new owner is currently billed for annual fees. How should I record the billing address for the ACL? I don't think this happens too much, but we did have a case where it did happen, so just in case it happens to you, what you need to do is issue a new WBID for the enforcement action. So I think it's best to put end dates for the old WBID. So you can actually contact Aaron or I for help with that. Through the wizard, you can actually put end dates for identifiers, but I think it's important to keep the old ones there because it's linked through the rest of your case. But the important part is to issue the new WBID, and that doesn't have a linked billing address, and then you'll have an opportunity to enter the correct billing information directly into that ACL record. And again, you do that by launching the update wizard, select modify, and change the WBID to what it needs to be. And then finally, we have the staff person related to an active ACL left the water board. What do I do? For that, you reassign the action to a new staff person. And this is very important so that we make sure that staff is receiving the emails and updating the record to keep, again, the record current, the data entry current on the record. So you launch the update wizard, select modify, select your new staff person, and go ahead and at the bottom say update enforcement action. And so those are the FAQs we've collected so far. I think we'll go ahead and add Russ's question as well, because that's come up a couple times too, about the payment being received at the time of settlement or agreeing to settle. And we're going to make a document of these FAQs or a web page of these FAQs and have that posted so you can refer to that, and we'll add to it as we get more. Do you want to mention reports that you can use to check out this information? We have the penalty project report for project-related information, the ACL report that lists all the ACLs, and the relatively new ACL problematic report. This was, the purpose of this report is really for the AES staff to use to identify the records that should be put on hold, or if there are problems with things that are getting into the financial management system. But you too can look at this report and see if any of your records have errors or warnings or holds, and it's available in our Run Reports menu. We do have some additional information on the ACL project. We have a fact sheet that Aaron developed, and it's posted on the Office of Enforcement's intranet site. Also, a lot of the information that we relied on came from the enforcement policy. And then we have an enforcement action data entry process that's posted on our intranet site under business